This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy. Let's be honest, loving your partner doesn't mean you always like them, and guess what? That's normal. Regain offers couples therapy that's flexible, affordable, and 100% online. Whether you're reconnecting or working through conflict, Regain is here to support you both. See why people wish they'd try couples therapy sooner. Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. That's regain.com/couplespod.
Message and data rates may apply or consult a doctor prior to use.
Wow, you look amazing. What have you been doing?
I'm sure you've heard of Ozempic, Wegovy, and the other GLP-1 medications, right? Well, I found this great company called Zelfie. If you qualify, their providers can prescribe medications like Ozempic and Wegovy and other GLP-1 medications that are 80 to 90% less expensive, all 100% online.
I can get GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% less and do it all online? No doctor's office or pharmacy?
Yes, Zelfie can provide semaglutide or tirzepatide, the active ingredients in Ozempic and other expensive GLP-1s, but for 80 to 90% less and shipped directly to your door.
How do I get started with Zelfie?
Call pound 250 with the word CARE to get started today with Zelfie. Get the same active ingredients in Wegovy or Ozempic, but for 80 to 90% less and 100% online. Don't wait. Call pound 250 with the word CARE right now for a link to your exclusive offer. Call pound 250 with the word CARE. That's pound 250 with the word CARE. Pound 250 and CARE.
Motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. If there's one thing that you know about me is that I am absolutely obsessed with the brand Cozy Earth. I wear their joggers during the day, almost every single day. And then at night, I sleep in their matching pajamas. I always wear the full pants with the long sleeve. It makes me feel very fancy and it keeps me cool at night. I sleep on Cozy Earth sheets with a Cozy Earth duvet cover. Like if there was a person that was a walking billboard for Cozy Earth, it would be me. It's actually a running joke between me and my husband because it's literally the only brand, not only that I wear during the day, but I wear at night and I sleep in at night. And the reason why is not only because it feels luxurious, but because it keeps me cool at night when I sleep. Because sometimes, ladies of a certain age may happen to be prone to night sweats. But the sheets are so soft and they're so snuggly that I get a great night's sleep every night between my sheets and the duvet cover, and it wraps me up and I just feel like I'm in this absolute beautiful cocoon of just cuddliness and perfect sleep. It's so soft. It feels so luxurious. I can't even begin to tell you how much I enjoy the Cozy Earth products. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because right now, Cozy Earth is running a special deal that if you use my code MMP, you can get 40% off their best-selling sheets, pajamas, and more. Trust me, you will not regret it. I am the walking billboard for Cozy Earth. And if I could impart one thing for you, you could afford it and you're worth it. Use my code MMP for 40% off. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs. I'm your girl, Tara, and this is where we're trying to solve the world's modern mom problems. And if we can't do that, hey, at least we're having fun talking about it. Today's conversation is about empowering our children and having self-driven children. I was on a webinar a few weeks back where there was this incredibly eloquent man, Ned Johnson, who was chatting about empowering our kids and getting our kids to be more self-driven. And I thought to myself, how have I not spoken to Ned before? How have we not been in each other's orbit? And so he actually was thinking the same thing on his side. And so immediately after that webinar, we connected via email and I said, hey, come on the show and let's talk about this kind of stuff. So here we are today talking about this kind of stuff. Ned has a new book out called The 7 Principles for Raising a Self-Driven Child. And let me tell you, it is such a deep, insightful book. We're going to get into it right now. Ned, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I have so many questions about your work and about all of the books that you've written, because you have a new book out, The 7 Principles of Raising a Self-Driven Child, but you have a whole body of work. You have the self-driven child. Go ahead, do it.
Bill and I have done a bunch of stuff. The self-driven child, the science and sense of giving your kids more control over their lives, it's been fun. That book has it's been kind of all over the place. It's like 1 million copies worldwide. So it's interesting to see it resonate, not just here in the States, but in places like China. And the most fun thing we've had of late, if folks have not yet seen the ultimate Bridget Jones movie, Mad About the Boy, someone emailed us and said, hey, do you know that you guys show up at minute 42, where Bridget, for what it's worth, is now, she's married, her husband has died, she has children, she's going back to work, so she hires a nanny. And so the nanny comes in and she's going on and says, oh, and this is, our son, the science genius. And the nanny's like, oh, we mustn't pigeonhole children. It makes undue pressure. Haven't you read How to Raise a Self-Driven Child? And she's like, no, but it's on my list. It's hilarious. We're like, well, okay, we're famous for all about maybe 4.5 seconds in a movie, but still.
Yes, you made it. That's how you know. If you're in a Bridget Jones film, you know you made it. That is incredible. And their production team never reached out to you to even ask about anything.
No, and my 23-year-old son, who understands social media in ways that I don't, showed me how to do the whole thing and tag this person and and sent it out, blasted pretty much everyone from the director down to the key grip, and it's like crickets. So apparently they like the concept. Is just, I don't know, it's background it's background decoration on the shelf, but don't actually want to talk to me. So that's okay.
Okay. Well, that's a separate conversation altogether, right? But I think it's wonderful. Just to give you a little bit of background with my son, I have a 12-year-old son. He goes to a school called Acton Academy that is learner-led. It is incredible. He attended a traditional public school all through elementary school. And then when he went into middle school, we chose to put him in Acton. It has been the single most life-changing thing we've ever done. And I tell everyone this, and it's not like this is an advertisement for Acton. It's absolutely not. I'm just saying our own experience. And the difference is because it's learner-led. And this obviously goes right into everything that you write about in your books, is that these kids need to be self-driven. Yesterday, we were doing carpool, and I was taking my son and his friend they do American Ninja Warrior, parkour class together.
I love it.
They love it. They're wonderful. It's so entertaining to watch them. And his friend, who goes to the traditional public school, was saying that she often confides in me, and she was saying that she has a lot of anxiety for all of the extracurriculars that she's in right now. And she said that she's getting to the point where she's shaking. She said, I'm physically shaking when I think about all of the things I have to do. And so now she's starting to advocate for herself to her parents and say, I don't want to do Taekwondo anymore. I don't want to do piano anymore. I do want to keep this or that. And I'm glad that she's getting to the point where she can start to advocate for herself, because for so long she was being talked to, not that it was an open dialogue or an open conversation. But how can we empower these kids to advocate for themselves, to be more self-driven?
Well, it's a great question. And the biggest thing for us is really to change the energy. And so if I take this young woman who's got all these things where instead of extracurricular activities being a source of identity and a source of stress relief, really, from the pressures of academics and social comparison and social media, and on it goes. They've become another source of stress. I was talking 3 or 4 weeks ago to a bunch of kids at a really good public high school in our area, and this one young woman, a junior in high school, said, "We filter everything that we do all day long through the eyes of a college admissions officer, every minute of it." And you're thinking, holy smokes. Because from a motivational perspective, what we really want is to foster intrinsic motivation as opposed to extrinsic motivation. So, social comparison, social media, is this my best? Are people happy with me? Did I get the AA? Am I pretty enough, smart enough, cool enough, strong enough? All of these things are externalized loci, my way, of control, right? Where we really want is an internal locus of control. And so one way to think about that energy is, for any person, are these things I've got to do or things I get to do? And it's and this is important because a lot of parents think, well, as long as my kid is working hard, it's all good, as though it's the quantity of motivation that matters, where it's the quality of motivation. Because listen, if you say, Ned, you've got to do this, I've got your kid hostage, I'm going to put a bullet, I'll do anything, right? I'll do all kinds of things that break all kinds of ethical, on and on it goes. So the quantity is enormous. But the problem is, there's no point at which extrinsic motivation magically morphs into intrinsic motivation, inner drive. So one of the things for parents, oftentimes, and I don't know this young woman, but girls especially, it's very easy for bright, academic, conscientious girls to tiptoe into perfectionism and all the anxiety that goes along with that. And they may feel that, and they don't announce this to mom or dad, they may feel that if I quit this, I'm disappointing the taekwondo, I'm disappointing my mom, I'm disappointing, or they've heard that you really need these things for college and you better start it in 5th grade and we really want to change the energy. So it's a solid idea at the start of every semester, end of school year, to take an inventory, say, hey, if you had to do it all over again, is this something you would do again? Or do you want to put your energy in a different direction? And you really try to take your finger off the scale so that you create space. Or I'd like you to think about this so you're not putting kids on the spot. I'd say, I'd love to, maybe sometime next week, think about, do you want to keep doing this? Or do you want to, again, go and try something else? But the perfectionistic kids especially, they're frozen because they don't like the path that they're on, the life that they're living, but they're terrified of doing anything else.
Yeah, I see so much of that in our town. We live in a very competitive town with an excellent school system, and it's all college prep, and that's what it's leaning towards, just as you mentioned there.
What corner of the world are you in? Where are you?
I am in Bergen County, New Jersey, just outside of New York City. Mm-hmm. So we are New York City metro area, where there are many high-achieving parents who expect high-achieving children.
Schools for highly gifted parents. Yeah. It's interesting. And the thing about this, I mean, we've been in, 26, 27, I'm not sure how many states, and again, 19 countries, blah, 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 20 countries, 19 languages. And I have to tell you this, Tara, that everywhere we go, this is a school of highly academic, highly talented, highly gifted, highly competitive. And it's everywhere. I mean, I've been lecturing a ton in places in around Columbus, Ohio, and I got to be honest, right? It's easy for me here in D.C. to think of Ohio as just a flyover state, and that's my own bias, and I gotta educate myself. But when I think about centers of academic competition and brilliance and affluence and blah blah blah, Ohio doesn't even make the top 10. And yet, but here we are, right? And so I just point this out for parents to know that in some ways the pressures and the stresses that their kids are under are not particular to them, their family, their school system, their community, even their state. And I say that not to sort of, you guys aren't that big a deal, but really to point out that it can't possibly be your fault if these are trends that are everywhere. However, certainly from your work, even though it's not your fault or my fault, we all have a real opportunity to work against the waters that our kids are swimming in, because there's an article I'm working through right now with the title of "But They're Getting A's," right, which is a hell of a big rock part of my language that people can sweep stuff under: anxiety disorder, substance use, da 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 da. On it goes, and say, but they're getting A's, as though that is a bomb that heals. Yeah.
Yes. No, that I can't wait to read that article, because that really resonates with me. I think the question there is, at what cost?
Correct. And many people have written about this, that, perfectionists, I'll just keep sort of poking on that for a moment. We see the performance and we're dazzled by the academic performance, the athletic performance, the artistic performance. Wow, 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 wow. But the wear and tear is so often internal until it's not. And then all of a sudden you've got kids, kind of just, flat on the floor. And you're like, how did this happen? We've got a dear friend here in the area who runs a really good center for anxiety and depression, named Jonathan Dalton. And he says, if you watch a professional juggler, and you think about your kid as a professional juggler who's going crazy, and they're 5 balls, 6 balls in the air, and you're amazed at this. When you throw a 7th ball, they don't drop one, they drop them all. Right? And kids will hold on until they can. So I don't want to, sort of go down a rabbit hole of anxiety and depression and suicidality, but it is important. And I can credibly say this as, co-author of these 3 books with my friend William Stickstrud, who is a clinical neuropsychologist and knows a lot more about brains than most people. And my day job is a test prep geek. So I've spent 30 years, 50,000 hours with other people's teens trying to help them get into college and high school and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. But from our perspective, the most important outcome of high school and adolescence that most parents and teens think is getting into a good university. I full-throatedly reject that idea. And rather, that the most important outcome of high school and adolescence is crafting, developing, sculpting the brain that kids are going to carry into college if they go, and more importantly, into the rest of their lives. Because apart from birth through, prenatal through age 2, the biggest period of brain maturation and brain development is during adolescence. And we the 2 real imperatives of adolescence are connecting with people outside of the family and developing independence, the sense that I can run my own life. And if we squander this, we really do this at great peril. Because if kids were, if just getting into college was the source of all happiness, then people at Yale, for instance, just to pick on them, would be among the happiest people in the world, as opposed to Laurie Santos having to teach a class on, here's how you be happy, right? Because you got all the achievement in the world, and you're still not happy. But it doesn't have to be a trade-off. I mean, this is the thing that we want parents to know, is that it's safe to trust their kids more and to worry about them less. And we can support kids in being successful in all the ways that are meaningful to them and important to you, but do it in a way that's sustainable and doesn't squander happiness and isn't brain toxic.
Yes, 1,000% yes. So I guess my question to you now then, Ned, would be how do we, how can we, I always say this, it's one of my favorite lines that I've ever heard of parenting advice is, we have to step back so they could step in. How are some ways, tangible ways, that we as parents can step out so they could step in?
So let me start this way. When we think about, we got to this idea of a sense of control for 2 reasons. One, the most stressful thing a human nervous system can experience is a low sense of control. There's a brilliant researcher named Sonia Lupin who says you can summarize what's stressful to the human nervous system with the acronym of NUTS, what makes us nuts, right? So novelty, new situations, unpredictability, perceived threat, right? And that's a big part of middle school, getting smart enough, pretty enough, whatever enough. And then a low sense of control. And her point is that a low sense of control is the worst thing that we can experience. And if most mental health conditions are really about dysregulated stress responses, and a low sense of control is the worst thing you can experience, then fostering a healthy sense of control is good for everything from anxiety to depression to eating disorders, substance use disorders, schizophrenia, on and on it goes. And a sense of control is absolutely pivotal to intrinsic motivation. You can be extrinsically motivated with a low sense of control, but you need to have, and we can talk about self-determination theory in a moment if you wish, But when we realize that a sense of control is vital for mental health and for intrinsic motivation, healthy motivation, we thought we're really onto something. When we think about a healthy sense of control, it's really in two domains. The subjective sense of autonomy, of choice. I'm not just a pawn in other people's plans. I say over my life because, it's my life. And the objective state that supports this, meaning that when we are in our right minds, the prefrontal cortex, the most recently evolved part of the brain, with all those executive functions of organization, planning, problem solving, decision making, but also important from a mental health perspective, emotional flexibility. When people are anxious, they're stuck with terrible thoughts, and they don't want to keep beating themselves up, but they can't get themselves to not think about this. So a sense of control is so important, and we can go at this from both the supporting autonomy and the brain part of it. So to answer your question, one of the biggest ways that we suggest doing this is for parents who feel like they have been in the kind of command and control mode. And it's really easy for parents to get there because schools well-intended educators tell well-intended parents, well, Tara, it's your job to make sure your kid comes to school prepared, to make sure she does his homework, to make sure. Well, the problem is if your kid just flat out says, nah, not going to do it. You're going to duct tape him to a chair. What are you going to do? And it makes sense, and this is especially true, that parents end up being more controlling when things aren't going well for their kids. Because when they're struggling emotionally or academically or mental health or whatever, because we get anxious, because we love our kids so much and want things to go well, we naturally have a tendency to jump in and want to sort of fix things for them, which I understand. But it does this at the expense of their sense of control. There's a beautiful researcher named Jesse Borelli who put tweens into let's think, what was it? It was a computer program where there was testing ostensibly their visual spatial reasoning ability. So how good is Ned at math Ned at these math puzzles? How good is Tara? And then they bring along our parents, in this case, just moms. And what they're really testing is what's the effect of teen stress on parents and what's the effect of parent stress on teens. So the puzzle looks easy. It's not. I think I'm going to kill it. I don't. It takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, and I'm still at it. And I'm getting more and more frustrated and therefore more and more stressed. And you can tell because I got a heart rate monitor on, which is going up and up and up and up. And my mom's sitting there watching going, he's usually pretty good at math. No, really, seriously, he's got an A in math for like the last 6 years. No, really, he's got better genes than this. Come on, Ned. And then eventually breaks the rules. Sorry, let me check that. Breaks the rule. There's only one rule, which is don't tell Ned how to do it. And to a one, they can't help it. And then, no, other left. Your other left, you dope. Because they have gotten more and more stressed because it is so hard. It is so hard as a parent to watch your kids struggle and not jump in. So here's the solution. You move in the direction from being a parent, homework police, the boss, the manager, the problem solver in chief, to shifting and thinking of yourself as a consultant. And you simply, three implications of this. You offer help and you offer advice. Hey, Ned, I think I know where that thing might go. Do you want me to? No, I've got it. Great. I now know that my mom's supporting me, but I'm not being told what to do. Because when she jumps in, again, my stress went up. You let kids make their own decisions unless they're crazy, meaning 19 out of 20 people say that's a terrible idea. And 3, you let them solve their problems as much as they can. Because when I make a mistake and you jump in and solve it, I get this thought in my head that I'm the problem maker and someone other than me is a problem solver, a problem fixer. And one of the most powerful things that kids can experience is the sense that they can screw things up royally with their friends in school, whatever, and there's a way back. There's a way out of it. There's a plan B. And when we solve problems for kids, we deprive them of that opportunity. Now, this is not just in their subjective sense of autonomy, but in the brain sense, the objective brain wiring of this. So do you know learned helplessness? Do you know Steve Mayer? Do you know this work? Right. So for people who don't know this, learned helplessness was 50 years of they thought they were conditioning animals to be helpless in the face of adversity. The paradigm paper that is worth reading is called Learned Helplessness at 50. What do we get right? What do we get wrong? What we got wrong was this. It was not that the animals learned to be helpless, but rather that they failed to ever learn a sense of control. That's a big change. So the paradigm study, one of them was they have 2 rats in a cage. This will go back to Jesse Borelli in a moment. 2 rats in a cage, rat A, rat B. Rat A, and their tails are out the back, they get shocked. Not going to kill them, but pretty annoying, stressful. Rat A, there's a wheel in the cage. When he spins the wheel, it stops the shock. Ah! This is really good. An adverse experience where there's a sense of control. When he spins this wheel, massive activation of the left lobe of the prefrontal cortex dampens down the stress response. This, at a neurological level, is what coping is. This is hard. Here's what I can do. I can do something. I'm not helpless, hopeless, powerless, overwhelmed. Rat B is over there spinning the wheel, spinning the wheel, spinning the wheel. Nothing happens. Rat B, basket case. Rat A, resilient. Put him in other situations, big scary rat, loud music, and he's like, and he doesn't freak out. He goes into coping mode. It's trans-diagnostic. It's trans-situational, meaning the experience here generalizes in other places. The clever experiment they did, this is important, they yoked the 2 rats. So rat A, when he now spun the wheel, he stopped the wheel for himself and brother rat B, who I'm sure was like, oh, you're the best man. Thanks, Dick. Oh, it was so hard for me, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is rat B, though he experienced the exact same amount of shock down to the microsecond, remained a basket case because he had no sense of control. He was forever the damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. Make your kid be rat B and you be rat A, and you've deprived him or her of the chance to feel like I have the ability to rescue myself. So this is why this consulting model is so important. We're not talking about abandoning kids. Well, it's your problem, buddy. You take care of it. But you simply step out of thinking it's my responsibility. It's my job. That's one of our questions. You ask, it's whose problem is this, right? When your kid comes home and was the only kid not invited to a birthday party, you panic and you want to call people up. But respectfully, it's not your problem. It's your child's problem. And then you can offer, say, hey, would it help if do you want me to call up, Tara's mom and see if a mistake was made? You do these things so you don't take away their autonomy and they feel the support, but you're not seizing control. It's not easy.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I was just about to say, it's easier said than done. I think with most things in life, it comes with practice.
Yes,
it's something that I've been working on for a very long time, because when my son was younger, let's say a toddler, I was all over him. I was doing this and I was doing that and controlling every situation. And that did not serve him well. And I know that. I could say that now. I could admit that. Right. Now that he is 12 and he is in a school environment that firmly is on his own shoulders. It is squarely on his responsibility to get his work done at his own pace, to show up to things on time, well prepared, all of those things. He's a totally different kid. And it has nothing to do with me. I still, even when we are together at home, still have to rein myself back. I'll give you an example.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Just yesterday, this is a silly one, but it's indicative of the situation. He was coming out of karate class. He actually does something called kendo, which is like swordsmanship. It's actually very cool. He was coming out of the class and he was holding a big bag of his armor. It's a huge duffel bag. And I thought that I was being helpful. So he was sort of like leaning on the glass door, but also still talking with his classmate. And I thought he was struggling to open the glass door. So I opened it and he said he almost like fell through the back of it. It was a comedy of errors. But I opened the door thinking that I was being helpful. But so he kind of like falls through it and he's like, Mom, like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I thought that you were struggling with the door. He's like, no, I just paused to talk to my friend. And I realized that was my fault. I'm always trying to be too helpful. And then even earlier in the day yesterday, I was helping my mom with something and I went to her house and I was doing something and she said, oh, I hate when you do that. And
it was something that I was trying to be overly helpful to help her. And really, she wanted the autonomy to be like, no, I got it. I can do this. So I had two things in one day where I messed up, and I could admit I'm self-aware enough to know that I need to work on that to let people have the autonomy to do the things that they need to do.
Well, and I love that you can see that, and what anyone who's listening to this can certainly feel, and you and I can both appreciate, is those were small things. You were just being kind, considerate, trying to be kind and considerate, and it didn't land the way that you imagined it would.
Right.
Where it's really messy is when things are really messy with our kids in school, and we get, school life, friends, mental health, whatever, and we get more panicked. And so the tricky space, to your point, is it's easier said than done. The tricky space is how do we continue to offer help or support, but in ways that are autonomy supporting. And a big part of this is our second book called What Do You Say, where you're shifting the energy and you're shifting the language. Where to simply say something to your mom and say, is there a way that I can help? Right? Would it be helpful if, would you? I got a thought on that. Would you like my advice? And she says, no, I think I've got it. Great. You simultaneously offered help, support. I see that there's a struggle here where you might need help, and I'm honoring your autonomy. And I'll use an example that's a little bit more kind of intense. Our daughter just turned 21. Was a really rocky ride through middle school and almost all of high school. It turned out she got diagnosed with autism at age 19. And so she, like a lot of people with their profiles, super sharp, but the kind of anxiety that comes along with in her case, really not having social intuition as readily as do some other folks. She had a neuropsych done in 8th grade. Nobody knew that she was, even then, they diagnosed anxiety.
Even with the neuropsych?
They didn't pick up on the ASD because she's incredibly bright.
Yeah.
And bright enough to figure out, one, how to mask, but two, how to navigate social situations capably. I mean, she's really funny, but it just wasn't socially intuitive. And so she would have kind of autistic burnout from her time at school and come home and just go in a room and watch YouTube for hours, which I thought she was socially isolating. When I finally learned about the autism, I know, this is her downtime. So as a person who never shuts up and tends to be way more social than my kid is, I would want to sort of love on her and say, let's go play games or whatever. And she just, and she felt bad because she was sort of rejecting me. And I felt bad because I thought she was deprived of what I thought was medicine. I was wrong. She was right. But what I finally started doing, particularly when she was later years of high school, was I would come and I could see this cloud had come over her head. And I'd say, ask her, is there something that I did? She'd shake her head. Is it something you want to talk about? She'd shake her head, right? Is there a way that anything I can do? She'd shake her head. I said, do you want, and so I get no, and occasionally just the shoulder shrugs, is there a problem? And she'd shoulder shrug, which means, yeah, there is a problem. She doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, she just didn't want to say anything.
Right. And so as a parent, I felt so helpless, right? Because what I wanted to do is have her tell the problem and help solve it. That's just the way that I'm wired. And frankly, it's kind of wired in loving attentive parents, hence what you were doing. But I realized that in that moment, it was too intense for her. And also, if we think about this, what we really want to do as parents is go from being the parent of a toddler where we dry all their tears, right, and we soothe them and we make them feel better, to really being able to support them in ways that they learn to dry their own tears and soothe themselves. Because a kid who leaves the house after high school who doesn't know how to regulate him or herself, oh God. I mean, oh man, this is a kid who's not prepared to regulate life, because life isn't always kind to our children, right?
No.
So what I finally found myself saying was, hey, listen, kiddo, I can see that you've had a day. If there's a way that I can help, I'd really like to do this. But it seems like you don't want to talk about this right now, and I totally get that. Is it cool? And I'd take force off the table and ask, is it cool if I circle back in like 45 minutes just to check in and see if there's a way that I can help? Again, no force, but offer of support. And she'd shake her head ever so slightly. And I go downstairs and I do whatever I do. And I swear to every single time, if I said I'll come up in 45 minutes, she'll come down in 40. If I said 30, she'd come down in 25. Every single time. Clouds had parted and she starts telling me about her day or whatever. And not once did I ever learn what the problem was. And this is what, and the second big piece of advice, in addition to being this consultant mode, is that we feel pretty strongly, and a lot of science that supports that it helps enormously if we as parents move in the direction of being what we call a non-anxious presence. And we borrowed this from a really neat guy, Edwin Friedman, he was a business consultant. He worked with family systems. He was a rabbi, really warm and wonderful guy. And he said that things just go better when the person or people who are in charge aren't overly reactive, aren't overly emotional. Because all the time, all students I work with tell me this, that, the other, and say, "Oh my gosh, please don't tell my mom. She'll just fall apart. My dad will get so mad." And I don't believe that I don't think she's actually accurate, in part because teenagers are so good at picking up on feelings, but they're terrible at interpreting. So they think that everything, that my teacher hates me. No, your teacher had a really bad day, right? And they're angry or frustrated near you. They're not frustrated at you, but teenagers, they're not great at that, right? And so kids all the time, because they feared their parents' reaction or their parents' overreaction, they wouldn't bring problems to their parents. And nobody knows this child more than mom and dad, and nobody is more invested in trying to help and offer support. Nobody. But the kid's perception is their parents are going to sort of go to pieces. And so one of the most helpful things we can do is move in the direction of being a non-anxious presence. And it's hard because when things aren't going well for our kids, our fears are never about the present. They're always about the future. Oh my gosh, that was Tara was their best friend, and she's never going to get a friend like that. And how is she going to get through 8th grade without any friend? I mean, you can imagine all the ways that our fears come to the fore. And so a bunch of the exercises in this new book are things for us to reflect on, an exercise for us to do by ourselves with our child, with our spouse, to really kind of think through our own thinking. So there are two things of this non-anxious presence. One, really tools of cognitive reframing. So, if I could tell every parent who's listening that the challenges that your kid is currently going through, just part of their path. There's part of the path. And I assure you, I can't say no, but I assure you that they're going to turn out great. Bill has this story. He got a Christmas card from this family, and he said I'd worked, and on the front of the card, it said, "You were right." And it was a picture of these three just wonderful folks and their spouses and the dogs, and they're all in their 30s, and they look great. And on the inside, letter from mom. And Bill said, "I tested all three of these kids when they were in high school, and they were all a hot mess," technical term, right? One of them dropped out of college because of all this emotional stuff, went back, dropped out a second time. Now is a very successful attorney at K Street Law Firm down here. And you wouldn't have predicted that. And part of it is that kids have brains in their heads, and they want their lives to work out. And their brains work better if we're less anxious, because stress is so incredibly contagious and FUBARs all those executive functions. But here's the great part. Calm, light went out for a second, we'll fix that. Here's the great news. Calm is also contagious. So anxiety is super contagious, but so is calm. And you think about this, you've got a 12-year-old. Have you gone to the ER with him yet? Well,
no, don't put that out into the universe.
Okay. So I had,
no.
all kinds of mayhem with both of my kids. And when you go to the ER, particularly at 2:00 at night when your kid's having a hard time breathing, this is one of the worst days in their young life, and certainly somewhere on your list of less than pleasant days. And so you show up there and you're really stressed out, right? But for the people who work there, it's Tuesday.
Right.
Right. And their sense of calm that, okay, we're going to figure this out, goes such a long way towards helping you as a parent go, all right, I can breathe. And the same thing for our kids. When they're like, we don't want to jump in the deep end of the pool with them. You just, you can use reflective listening and say, wow, sounds like you've really had a day. Is there a way that I can help? And you just change the energy. And it makes it so much more likely that kids bring problems to us, because we really, as problem solvers that we want to be, it's pretty hard to solve problems that we don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important that they feel comfortable enough to bring those to us when they really need it. There's definitely a time and a place for them to solve their own problems. Yep. But sometimes if it does get escalated in a certain way, given a particular situation, we should know too. And so 100%. I think it's really important to lay that foundation with them early so that they can feel comfortable coming to us.
I had such a fun experience. This is in our second book. Our son, when he was, so when the first kind of moving into consultant mode, when he was just your son's age, and again, my son's ADHD, so everything was at the last minute, organization, not a skill, particularly at that age. And my wife was really helping him, and perhaps over helping. She's a lovely human with homework. And she's she teaches Latin at independent school, very academic, blah, blah, blah. And some assignment had not been done, handed in. I don't remember exactly. And she said something like, well, why did you hand it in? And he replied with precisely the same energy. Well, because you didn't remind me. And I'm like,
that sounds familiar.
Right. So I go over, I said, time out, folks. And I put my arm around and said, listen, kiddo, we don't throw mom under the bus. To begin with, she's done 6th grade successfully. This is your turn, right? And that's not a good long-term play because you're probably going to want her help, like ride someplace. And I look at her, I said, sweetheart, obviously that has to be my side of the family, my bad with giving you a hard time for being so doggone helpful. I said, but she could run her schedule, and she's executive functions out her ear. So she can run her schedule, my schedule, my son's schedule, our daughter's schedule. If you need help, Tara, we can house her. She's an incredibly competent human being, right? But of course, just because she could do it better doesn't mean that she should. Because anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly first, right? And he needed the opportunity, particularly if you've got a kid in middle school. People are always like, I've got to prepare him for high school. Do not deprive kids of the opportunity to screw things up royally in middle school. It's a terrible idea. And then because all you're doing is pushing those forward to high school or in college, I mean, when do the stakes get lower? Give me a break, right?
They really don't. I mean, that's the thing.
That's right.
All of it's important.
That's, and what I would say, we want to make mistakes left, right, and center all the way through at least middle school. And I would argue to high school, but I understand when people get more worried about the grades that pile up there. I'll come back to the story about my son in a moment. One thing that I'll say is that parents get so worried and they jump in front of natural consequences where kids would screw things up. And then they inflict upon them logical consequences. So your kid, you're all over him to make sure he gets a good grade, right? And you see he's not studying, you take his cell phone away. Okay, well, you've deprived him of getting a really stinky grade and living with that. The first test that my kid took after was sort of counseling my wife to sort of, get on the same page with us. He's walking home from school. I'm driving. I popped home. I'm driving back to my office. Hey, kiddo, how are you? Hey, Dad. How's your day? Oh, great. We had pizza. Anything going on today? Oh, we got that history test back. Fantastic. How'd it go? Not very well. Oh, yeah, I got a 52. In my head, I'm like, out of 100? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I jump into tutor mode. So I'm asking, like, well, was the timing not good? Did you get stuck on this problem? Did you not, whatever. And he's finally like, and whenever he's deep in thought, he sort of look off into the left corner. He's like, I think I studied the wrong chapter. I'm like, well, that would do it, right? And it could have been so easy. 52, you're not going to Tara's birthday party. You got to take this seriously. Blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing that I think is really important. I got this from Tara Rosensweet, if you know her, Peaceful Parenting author. And she said, when your kid screws something up and there's a natural consequence, input A, bad output B, emotionally, you need to take their side. Oh my gosh, I studied like crazy and I got this terrible grade from Mr. Johnson. And you're thinking, study, buddy. You were like watching 6 hours straight of hockey. Give me a break, right? You can't do that if you want them to learn from that natural consequence and you want to preserve your place as a non-anxious consulting parent, right? And you say, dude, that must be so frustrating to feel like you studied like crazy and you bombed the test. The key thing that I snuck in there was feel. I'm not agreeing with his facts, but it must be stressful, upsetting to feel like you studied like crazy. And then it went terribly. And when we do this, the kid is much more likely to feel supported and to be honest with, maybe I should have studied a little more, because they're just going to be more open to it. Again, when we're not anxious, we don't jump on them. Here's one of the longer term tales on this. This is in our second book. Our son was at this point sophomore in high school, I think sophomore, and there was a school dance. And there was a party after the dance. And it was the first time that he had been invited to a high school party. So he's asking him, like, do you need a ride? No, I've got this, blah, blah, blah. And we're out for a walk. And he sort of dances around the conversation for a few minutes. And he finally summons the courage and asks, what do I do if people drinking alcohol there. Now, that's a vulnerable question, in part because we could have like freaked out. Alcohol? Whose party is this? Tara? And we could have called up Tara's parents and shut the whole thing down, and including his social life before it even gets started, because Matthew's parents are such nerds. And why did you tell them there's going to be beer there? Whatever. Not the way we rolled with this. And so, well, tell me more. Again, in another few minutes, he finally comes around to this cautionary tale of some party somebody had gone to, knew about. Some girl got super drunk, like passed out, blackout, like life-threatening drunk. Some other girl called 911. The ambulance, cops, everybody shows up, and everybody scatters like roaches under a light.
Like you see in the movies.
Like you see in the movies, every direction, out the windows, jumping, except for this one girl who stays with her, the Good Samaritan. And so the Good Samaritan the cops show up, the ambulance, whatever, and she gets a citation for $500 for being someplace where alcohol is served. So the way the story got passed around from teen to teen was really a cautionary tale of don't be there if people were drinking alcohol. My kid was not drinking alcohol yet. And so he was so worried about this. And like, what do I do? What do I do? $500. And I said, well, I really appreciate you sharing. We gave a couple nuggets of maybe you could do this. I said, but if I may, there's another way to look at that story. What's that? Well, one could credibly make the case that that girl paid $500, and that's a lot of babysitting money, I know. Mm-hmm. Paid $500 to save the life of another kid. So, for me, and he got the point. And so, from our perspective, that kind of conversation to really communicate to him the values that we try to hold to. How do you get the opportunity to have those conversations if you're freaking out about a B- on a paper? Because you're giving them the message that when things are messy, dad loses his mind and gets super worked up. I'm not going to bring big problems to him. That's not how we roll.
Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing story. I had a feeling that you were going to say about the paying $500 to save her life. That is incredible. Yeah. I often, I speak about modern mom problems all the time, right? That is what we do here on the show. And I have not really fully wrapped my head around the teenage years of modern mom problems. Middle school, I have down right now. I feel pretty good about middle school. But, whoa, boy, those teenage modern mom problems are going to be some next level stuff, I think.
Well, and you're laying the groundwork now for the relationship you have with them in high school, right? And what the relationship you have in the high school is laying the groundwork for the relationship you have as an adult. Mm-hmm. Even my kid, it was just been hilarious to watch, because when he got into college and he started dating, he kept asking her advice. He's like, I can't believe I'm telling you about all this, right? And a little bit, sometimes a little TMI. But right now he's got this really, what looks like kind of the most serious relationship he's had. And he's really trying to pitch forward, is this the one? Right? And he's inviting us into our conversation. We're trying really hard not to put our thumb on the scale, because as anyone is, he's ambivalent, right? Because there are many reasons why, and there are many reasons why, it's this person versus every other possible person in the universe. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot to weigh there. And we said, it's listen, kiddo, it's your call. We have to support him in making a decision. Goodness knows, it will be so wrong and so impossible for anyone other than him to own that decision. And we start with that, at the youngest possible age. Right.
Was there a tipping point at which point you said, I need to write these books, this series of books to talk about self-driven
Yeah,
children?
so the way that we actually have a podcast interview, The Marvel Origin Story of the Self-Driven Child. And it was simply that, so Bill is a clinical neuropsychologist, works with kids where learning is hard and emotional regulation is hard and attention is hard. And so people come to him when things are hard, right? I tend to work with the more kind of overachieving corner of folks here in DC and around the country. And someone asked us whether we would lecture at a local school about motivation. And we kind of comment from we're little yin and yang, but the more we did this a few times in technology and sleep deprivation and on it goes, and the more we talked with one another, we really just kind of liked how each other thought. And Bill at one point said, it seems like we should write some of this stuff down. And he asked, he said, does it feel to you like there's an organizing principle? And I said, yeah, it feels to me like all the advice we give, from getting enough sleep to, goal setting, is increasing people's perceived sense of control. And that's when, again, the motivation and the stress tolerance. But when you look at this, the need for autonomy, it's a biological imperative. We met someone who was doing a doctoral dissertation on autonomy in 4-month-old children. If they teach them to shake or rattle and then they get a prize or treat or whatever, and then you just give them the thing rather than shaking the rattle, they get pissed. They want to earn it. Ellen Langer, with if you've got a parent or grandparent in a retirement home, and they have choice of here's a plan. Do you want to water or do you want me to water? These young people from a local school, they're going to come by at 4 o'clock on Thursday. Do you want them to come by on Wednesday or Thursday? Which of those is better? When you give people choices, they friggin' live longer. Because a low sense of control is the worst thing from infant to the end of your days, the worst thing that you can experience. And so that's kind of how we got in it. And honest to gosh, once you start seeing things through this lens, you see it everywhere. And it's such a powerful construct for engagement, motivation, and also stress tolerance. So. And so certainly, to your experience with your son at Acton, we are working. There's a whole the last chapter in the 7 principles. So chapter 8 is aimed right at public high schools, and we're a little rough on them, to be honest, because there are so many ways, big picture structurally, and really small day to day, where it is possible and right for people to support and educators to support autonomy for young people. And it makes a world of difference. I mean, there's a research that came out of Yale a few years ago that 75% of the feelings that kids have around school are negative. And most kids are simultaneously tired, stressed, and bored. When the ideal learning environment is relaxed alertness, instead they're stressed and bored. And if we really think about schools not just as places of learning, but really places for human development, and we're having people stressed and bored most of the time, oh man. So we're working with a bunch of educators who are really working on bringing this project-based learning, student-directed learning, because it's good for educational outcomes and it's great for mental health.
Yeah, I love that. I support it. I walk the walk and talk the talk on that kind of stuff.
So glad you do. And the reason it's so great for me that you do is you make it so much more likely that other moms who are listening can feel that it's safe and it's right to do the things that you're suggesting.
Yeah. I love this. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, fathers, mothers, childless, everybody.
Is it multiple choice? Okay,
no.
Never mind.
It's an essay form. Get your little blue book.
Yep.
It's an essay. Okay. What do you think is the biggest modern mom problem today?
I know your list of 10, and it
could be anything.
And all of those things are true. But through the lens that we see things, it's this: that moms have been made to feel responsible for their children and the outcomes of their children. We have in this book these myths that a good mom makes sure her kid always does his homework. A good mom makes sure that her kid has good hygiene. A good mom makes sure that kid has clean clothes to wear to school and is wearing clean clothes to school every day. And on it goes. And to invoke from your list, the cognitive load of that is enormous, because if you go back to this chapter, of the idea of being a parent consultant, where you simply say, I love you too much to fight with you about your homework, or I love you too much to fight with you about...
My husband uses that line all the time.
Yeah. I mean, Bill had the other day had a family who, the kid was 8 or 9 and just fighting bedtime over and over and over. And it was really creating a problem for the kid and also for the mom. And at some point he was in bed and he was goofing around. She lay down next to him and said, listen, kiddo, I just love you too much to fight with you about this all the time. You know what it feels like to be tired. I know that you're not your best self when you're tired. I'm not my best self when I'm tired. But I just love you too much to fight with you about this. And if there's a way that I can help you, make bedtime a little bit easier, if you need an extra story, you tell me, what can I do? And she said, he just hugged her and he just melted. He just melted. And it's so hard. It's so hard on the relationship than moms, especially because they tend to do certainly more than 50% of the emotional work. It's so hard on them when they feel like they're responsible for doing things that in many ways are impossible, because goodness knows you can't make an infant fall asleep. If we did, we'd all have like 2.5 more kids, right? You can't do it, right? And when we make peace with the fact that we can't make our kids do things, and when we try, it's so bad on us because it's stressful to us. It's so bad on our kids. It's stressful to them, and it's so bad for our relationship. There's this is 2021, and I was lecturing at a local school about our book, What Do You Say? And this mom came up to me. She's African American. This matters in a moment. And she said, I read The Self-Driven Child in the summer of 2020. If you can remember summer of 2020, nobody has vaccines yet. I mean, it's terrible. She said, and, George Floyd and all that. And she said, it really felt like America was hunting children who look like my kid. And she said, I can't even tell you how hard it was. I can't even tell you. And she said, but I read The Self-Driven Child, and I committed myself to making sure that home felt like a safe base. Because we know, among other things, that one of the ways that children develop, or any of us develop resilience, is we have things that are hard, high stress, and then we have full stress recovery. High stress, full stress. And this wires the brain, prefrontal cortex, to regulate the stress response. And the strength of those connections is the single strongest neurological marker of mental health. So it's a really big deal. And so she said, so I committed myself to making sure that home felt like a safe base. What else could I do? I couldn't control all of this, but home was going to feel safe. And she said it completely changed my relationship with my son. And it's such a powerful way. And for moms who feel like I've got to. And if you really just put your energy on, I get to focus on the relationship with my kid, and the rest of it, almost everything else will tend to fall into place when we just focus on their relationship with our kid.
That's it. That's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. Ned, you're incredible. I could talk to you literally all day. Tell everyone where we could buy the new book. And all of the books, not just the new book, get all of them.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I will gently make a plug for everyone to go to the local bookstore, independent bookstore, because they're gathering places, and we all need more community. You're probably going to pay $1 more at the local your local school. But if you don't have that, then you need that Bezos guy or this Amazon thing. It's kind of trendy right now, so you can always go there. You can find us. Our website is The Self-Driven Child, or if you're a busy mom, Self-Driven Child. You can drop the that'll get you there too. And then I'm on social media and doing all that kind of stuff.
I love that you said you saved the 3 keystrokes.
We're busy people.
We're very busy. We got a lot going on. We're working on the relationships with our children. We have a lot to do. Yeah. Ned, thanks so much for being here today.
Tara, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. You're such a gift to people who just, who doesn't need a little more help?
We all do. And that's what we're here for, to help each other.
I agree.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.